I had always heard strange things about Black Hollow Woods, but I never paid much attention. People from the nearby town would whisper about it, saying it was cursed, that the trees had a life of their own, and that those who ventured too deep would never come back. As a kid, I thought it was just local superstition, something to spook the younger ones and keep them out of trouble. But now, standing at the edge of the forest, a chill ran down my spine. I had grown up hearing the stories from my grandfather, whose face would grow pale whenever Black Hollow came up in conversation. He always warned me to stay away, but my curiosity had grown over the years. Today, something felt different. The air was unusually still, not a bird in sight, not a single rustling leaf. I could smell the damp earth and the faint scent of pine as I stood at the forest's edge, looking in. I could feel the weight of its silence pressing against me, as if it was waiting for me to make the first move. The trees loomed tall and dark, their gnarled branches twisted in unnatural shapes. The sunlight barely pierced through the thick canopy above, casting long, eerie shadows on the forest floor. As I stepped forward, the ground beneath my boots felt soft, almost spongy, like the earth was trying to pull me deeper into its grasp. I tried to shake the uneasy feeling off, telling myself it was just my imagination. But something in the air was different. It was as though the woods were alive, watching me, judging my every step. The faintest whisper seemed to come from deep within the trees, too faint to make out, but unsettling nonetheless. I paused, listening carefully, but the whisper faded as quickly as it had come. I told myself it was just the wind, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The longer I stood there, the more I felt the forest drawing me in, calling to me. It was as if the trees were inviting me to uncover their secrets. But I had a strange feeling they would not let me leave once I entered. Despite the rising tension in my chest, I took another step forward. The moment my foot touched the soft soil, I heard it again. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper. This time, I couldn't ignore it. The whisper sounded like my name, faint and distorted, carried on the wind. It sent a jolt of fear through me. I couldn't bring myself to turn back. My legs felt heavy, and my heart pounded in my ears, but still I pressed forward, unable to fight the pull. What was it? Was it the forest itself trying to speak to me or something? Worse? I didn't know how much further I would go, but I felt as though I was already too far in. Every step felt like I was sinking deeper into a place where reality bent and twisted. A place where the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred. The forest was changing, and I was becoming part of it. The deeper I ventured into Black Hollow Woods, the more the atmosphere seemed to change. The trees grew closer together, their branches reaching out like bony hands trying to trap me. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the occasional creak of a distant tree or the rustling of leaves underfoot. It was as if the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And then it did. A soft whisper fluttered through the air again, but this time it was louder, more distinct. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. It wasn't the wind this time. It was something else. The words were indecipherable, yet they seemed to beckon me forward, urging me to follow. My instincts screamed at me to turn around and run, but my feet moved on their own, carrying me deeper into the woods. With each step, the world around me seemed to distort. The shadows between the trees grew darker, stretching unnaturally long as if they were reaching for me. The air became thick and heavy, pressing down on me, making it harder to breathe. My skin prickled, every hair standing on end as I felt an unseen presence surrounding me. I wasn't alone in this forest. I could feel it. Something was watching me. A branch snapped behind me, loud and sudden, causing me to whirl around in panic, but there was nothing there. The forest was still, eerily still. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was moving just beyond my sight. I heard another whisper, louder this time, almost like a voice, deep, hollow, and full of malice. It spoke my name. I couldn't breathe. My heart raced, and the fear began to seep into my bones, making my legs weak. I tried to call out to yell for help, but no sound left my lips. The air was thick, like it was suffocating me, and my surroundings began to warp. The trees seemed to bend, twisting and stretching in unnatural angles, their bark shifting, as though they were alive. Then, through the darkness, I saw it. A figure. It was just a silhouette at first, barely visible through the dense trees, but it was there. A shadow, human-shaped. But its outline was distorted, like it was flickering in and out of existence. I tried to move, but my legs were frozen in place. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the figure. It began to move towards me, its form shifting with every step, as if it was made of shadows themselves. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a storm. I could hear the rustling of leaves, but it wasn't the wind. No, it was something else, something more deliberate. The ground beneath me seemed to tremble, and I felt a cold hand brush my skin. I gasped and stumbled backward, but there was no escape. The figure was getting closer, and the whispers were becoming louder, almost deafening. I had to get out. I had to leave. But no matter how hard I tried to move, my body refused to obey. It was like the forest had trapped me in its grip, its roots digging into the earth, holding me in place. The trees creaked and groaned, as if they were alive, watching, waiting. The figure reached out, its hands stretching towards me, fingers long and twisted, like claws. I tried to scream, but the words were stuck in my throat. The whispering grew louder, turning into a growl, a sound so low and guttural that it felt like it was coming from deep within the earth itself. And then, everything went dark. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in the darkness. It felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than a few moments. The shadows around me thickened, the air turning colder, sharper, as if the very forest itself was closing in on me. The whispering had stopped, but it was replaced by a deep, throbbing silence, so complete that I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. My body was trembling, not from the cold, but from the sheer, unrelenting fear that had gripped me. The figure was still there, hovering just beyond the trees, its shape flickering like a broken reflection in a mirror. It didn't move, at least not in any way I could understand. One moment, it would be in one place, and then, in the blink of an eye, it would be somewhere else closer, its presence growing heavier in the air. My legs felt like they were cemented to the ground. Every part of me screamed to run, to flee, but my body refused to obey. And then, just as I thought I might suffocate under the weight of the terror, the whispers returned. Only now, they weren't whispers anymore. They were words, distinct and unmistakable, coming from all directions. The voice was everywhere at once, deep, guttural, and ancient. It spoke in a language I couldn't understand, the words feeling like they were scraping at my very soul. But then, I heard it. My name. It wasn't a whisper this time, but a command. I could feel it in my chest, like it was being spoken directly into my heart. Come closer, the voice beckoned. It's time. A cold gust of wind swept through the trees, the sound of it carrying with it an almost tangible presence. I could feel it brushing against my skin, like hands grazing my body, caressing my arms with an unnatural chill. The trees around me creaked, their trunks groaning in protest, as if they were warning me, telling me to leave, to turn back before it was too late. But I couldn't. It was like the forest had a hold on me, pulling me forward. My feet moved on their own, dragging me deeper into the heart of Black Hollow. The shadows around me twisted, the trees bending in unnatural shapes, their branches weaving into a dense canopy that seemed to swallow the light. The path ahead was shrouded in a thick fog, and as I walked, it felt like the world was narrowing, as if the forest itself was leading me towards something terrible, something waiting in the dark. And then I saw it. At first, it was just a shape in the mist, something faint and indistinct. But as I moved closer, I could make it out more clearly. A door. A wooden door standing in the middle of the woods, surrounded by a ring of twisted trees. The door was old, rotting at the edges, its paint peeling away in flakes. It was as if it had no place being here, out in the middle of nowhere. Yet there it was, standing as though it had always belonged. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, as I stood in front of the door. "Open it," the voice commanded, its tone now laced with malice. "Come inside. You have no choice." My hand reached for the handle before I even realized what I was doing. My fingers brushed against the cold, weathered wood, and as soon as I touched it, the door creaked open on its own, revealing a pitch-black void beyond. I couldn't see anything inside, but I could feel it. The presence, the force, the thing that had been calling me all this time. I wanted to turn away, to run, but my body wouldn't obey. My heart pounded in my chest, and as I stepped into the darkness, the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. The world went silent again, and the shadows closed in, surrounding me completely. I was no longer in the woods. I was somewhere else, somewhere far worse. I was engulfed by darkness, the kind of darkness that presses in from all sides, thick and suffocating. I couldn't see anything, not the walls, not the floor beneath my feet, nothing. It was as if I had entered another world entirely, a place where the laws of reality no longer applied. My breath came in shallow gasps, my heart racing with panic. The silence was deafening, broken only by the pounding of my own blood in my ears. And then slowly, the shadows began to shift. The air around me grew colder, and I could feel the temperature dropping rapidly, as if the very atmosphere was being drained of warmth. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, but it didn't help. The cold seemed to seep into my bones, freezing me from the inside out. I tried to move, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. It was as if the ground itself had become sticky, holding me in place, forcing me to face whatever horror was waiting. From the darkness, I began to hear something. Slow, deliberate footsteps, echoing softly through the emptiness. The sound was faint at first, just a whisper, but it grew louder with every passing second. I strained my eyes, searching the blackness for any sign of movement, but there was nothing. Just the sound of the steps, and the oppressive stillness. Then I saw them, a pair of glowing eyes, faint at first, flickering like distant stars in the pitch-black void. They were impossibly high up, too high for any human to reach, but there they were, staring down at me with a malevolent hunger. My heart stopped in my chest as the eyes blinked, and the shadow around them seemed to ripple like water. And then it spoke. Not in words, but in a guttural, otherworldly growl, like the sound of 1,000 whispers, all layered on top of each other. The voice wasn't just in my ears. It was in my mind, in my soul, crawling under my skin and into my thoughts. It was everything. It was the forest, the trees, the very ground I stood on. It was Black Hollow itself, and it wanted me. "Why did you come here?" The voice boomed, its tone dark and mocking. "You were warned, yet you chose to enter. Now you will never leave." I tried to move, to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. It felt as though something was crushing my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs. The eyes began to move closer, slowly, deliberately, until I could feel the heat of them burning into my skin. They were no longer distant. They were here, right in front of me, and I couldn't escape. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet gave way. I tumbled forward, unable to stop myself, and I fell into the darkness. But it wasn't a fall. It was a spiral, a twisting, endless descent into the void. I couldn't see anything, couldn't feel anything but the rush of air around me, the growing sense that I was being pulled deeper into something far worse than I had ever imagined. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening now, as if 1,000 voices were screaming inside my head. The walls of the darkness seemed to close in, twisting and contorting in ways that defied logic, until I couldn't tell which way was up or down. My heart was pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else, but I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop myself from falling. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. I was back in the woods, standing at the edge of Black Hollow. The trees loomed around me, silent and still, as though nothing had ever happened. But I knew something had changed. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the ground beneath me felt wrong, as if it was still holding on to the terror that had just consumed me. I turned around, expecting to see the forest behind me, but there was nothing. There was only the door, the same rotting wooden door, standing alone in the middle of the woods. And it was open. I could hear the whispers again, faint at first, then growing louder, coming from the darkness beyond. It was calling to me. It wanted me to step back through, but I knew now. I knew what awaited inside, and I realized with a sinking feeling in my gut that I was never meant to leave. The door slammed shut behind me with a deafening crash. The whispers stopped. The woods grew silent once again. But as I stood there, facing the unbroken line of trees, I knew one thing for certain. Black Hollow had claimed me. I woke up with a start, gasping for air, as if I had been submerged in water for far too long. The familiar sounds of the forest filled my ears. The rustling of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, and the soft whistle of the wind through the trees. For a moment, I thought I had somehow escaped, somehow made it out of Black Hollow. But as my eyes slowly adjusted to the light filtering through the trees, I realized something was terribly wrong. I was still standing in the woods. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the ground. It wasn't the soft, welcoming light of morning. It was something colder, something foreboding, like the last vestiges of day before the darkness consumed everything. The trees around me seemed different, as if they had grown closer together in the time I had been gone, their branches twisting unnaturally, reaching toward me like fingers hungry for my attention. And then I saw it. The door. It was standing right in front of me, as if it had been waiting all along. The same old rotting wooden door, surrounded by the same twisted trees. The door that should never have existed. The door that had taken me to that terrible place. It was open, inviting me to step through once again. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt that same pull. Stronger now, more insistent, as if the forest itself were demanding my return. The whispers came again, soft at first like a gentle breeze, but I could hear the urgency in them, the need, the hunger. It was calling to me, offering me something I couldn't understand, but somehow felt compelled to take. I tried to move away, to turn my back on the door and run, but my feet wouldn't obey. My body was frozen, stuck in place, as if the forest had taken control of me once again. The door was not just a door. It was a trap, a gate to a place I could never escape. I had been here before, in that dark, twisted realm, and now I was being drawn back, like a moth to the flame. But this time, something inside me snapped. I could hear my breath coming in ragged gasps, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. This time, I wasn't going to let it consume me. I wasn't going to give in. With every ounce of strength I had left, I forced my body to move. My legs shook with the effort, my mind screaming at me to stop, to give in, to step through that cursed door and accept my fate. But I didn't. I ran. I ran as fast as I could, my feet pounding against the earth, the sound of the door slamming shut behind me echoing in my mind. The whispers grew louder, but I refused to listen. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I didn't know if the forest would ever let me go, if it would ever release its hold on me, but I knew I had to try. I had to get out. The trees began to thin as I ran, and soon I could see the edge of the woods in the distance. The familiar path that led me home, the one I had once walked with ease, was now a lifeline, a beacon of safety in the overwhelmed darkness. I pushed myself harder, faster, until finally I broke free of the woods. My body was shaking, my lungs burning with the effort, but I didn't care. I had made it. I was out. The forest, the door, the darkness, they were behind me. Or so I thought, as I stood there, on the edge of the forest, breathing in the fresh air of freedom. I felt it. The chill in the air, the cold that seemed to settle in my bones. I looked around, expecting to see the bright sunlight of the clearing, but instead the shadows around me stretched unnaturally long, the trees looming like dark sentinels, watching me, waiting. I turned around slowly, dreading what I knew I would see. The door was there, still open, still waiting, and the whispers began again, louder this time, more insistent, almost like a chant. It was no longer a question. It was an order. And in that moment, I understood. I understood what Black Hollow truly was. It wasn't just a place. It wasn't just a forest. It was a trap. A place where those who entered were never meant to leave. The door was always there, always waiting, always calling. I had escaped, but not for long.